What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is the 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E GT. So about the GT version of the Mach-E here. Well, I mean, it's just so much cooler looking than the regular Mach-E in my opinion. It really amps up the aggression here. And the regular Mach-E also looks very good. I actually just purchased a regular Mach-E recently. I think the styling is really good. It's really warmed over on me over the past year and a half here. But I really do love the changes here they made for the GT version. So right up front there, you'll see you have a completely different front end with the same headlights, but otherwise everything else has changed. So you have a grille area there that's now painted with this very metallic black kind of textured look to it, and it's just a nice way to set off the rest of the grills, unlike other regular versions of the Mach-E where you have just a sea of body color. This actually breaks it up a little bit, and I just think it looks a little bit more traditional, for those who are expecting a grille and, aren't used to the whole electric car look. I think this looks a little more traditional and looks really nice. I also love how you have those functional air curtains there built into the front bumper there, and I like that those are also painted in black to set it off a little bit as well. You also have that front lip that really juts out and gives us a very mean look too. And then coming down to the sides, you have these unique 20-inch wheels on wider 245 wide tires, which are all seasons here on the GT. The Performance Edition of the GT, which this is not, those have summer tires, but we have all seasons here, the Continentals. You get a different look for the wheels for the Performance Edition as well. Also on the sides, that really I think is also what transforms the look of this compared to a regular Mach-E, which looks a little bit more like a crossover. They painted the fender flares here versus that being black on a regular Mach-E, and so that kind of gets rid of the SUV look a little bit. I also think that them lowering it, they actually lowered the suspension by about 0.4 inches here for the GTs, so that also makes this look a little bit more like a lowered crossover, or honestly it looks like a sport wagon or something more so than an SUV. And I think that roof trick that they do here, where they paint half of the body line for the roof and the other half is painted black, really helps to make this look lower as well. And then going out to the back here, you'll see that you have the GT badge and a slight tweak to the little rear diffuser part there of the rear bumper, but otherwise very similar out back there, no big changes. And so anyway, overall, all around the Mach-E GT here I think just looks really good now. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Mach-E GT here has the regular Mach-E key, which is a black pony, and it's this one's a little beat up, so you're usually just be a normal black pony. This one's got a little bit of extra silver there, but just a few buttons there on the back. And these Ford keys are a little bit on the thick side, but they have some nice buttons here, and the metal on the bottom's a nice touch. And so overall, a pretty nice key. But of course, it is keyless access, keyless entry, push button start. You can also use your phone as the key. There's also a pin pad to get in on the vehicle here, and then you can also program a code to start the vehicle here with the touchscreen as well. So lots of ways to access and drive off in this vehicle if you'd like. But anyways, leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it turns right on. And if you're curious to hear about the interior in the Mach-E GT, my wife and I already did a full in-depth interior review last year on a regular Mach-E, so I will link that above. You can go watch that if you want to hear all our thoughts on the Mach-E interior overall. Now for the GT, you do get a few nice extra little upgrades and special touches. So first off is these seats. You have these sport seats. They have much thicker bolstering here. You also get rid of the nice synthetic leather seats that the regular Mach-E premiums have, and instead you go to these Alcantara seats, or it's this suede-like material like Alcantara. And they certainly grip you better, but to me, they make your back a little bit harder because they're not perforated. The regular Mach-E seats in the premium are perforated. They're unperforated in the Select. But, the premium gets perforated seats. They breathe much better than these seats do. And there's no cooled seats here in the Mach-E's still for any trim. So you're stuck with a hot back, a good bit of the time, especially here in the GTs, unfortunately. And it's also worth noting, if you go for the Performance Edition, you will get an even sportier seat than these, and a very cool design to them. It's totally different for the seat versus these. But these seats overall, as far as the sportiness factor goes, they're certainly an upgrade over the premium and the Select, and are still very comfortable. They have adjustable lumbar and feel great. You also will see you have these bronze accents here on the doors, along with some extra Alcantara there, and bronze stitching, and those bronze accents are basically all over all the stitching here and the trim on the dash. You also will see a GT badge here embossed into the armrest, and that's basically it as far as the exclusive stuff for the GT here. So basically basically the same as any other Mach-E, but that means it's still a very nice place to be. Still has top-notch tech and really nice materials for the money, and overall, you know, still a very nice vehicle to be in. All right, so setting off here in the Mach-E GT. Well, the first thing I think I noticed coming out of the premium is that this has definitely heavier steering. That mostly comes down to probably the 245 wide tires versus the 225s you get on regular Mach-Es. And also, I think they also just made it a little sporty here for the GT as well. And so it just feels sportier from the first second you turn the steering wheel in this thing. It also feels a little bit sportier with the ride. So they definitely have a sportier suspension again to go along with the lowered suspension. And, you know, obviously it's a little bit stiffer for performance reasons, but that just means that out here on the road, you know, I mean, at least at, you know, low speeds so far that I've been doing, it's, you know, a tiny bit bumpier. Now, it still is fine, it's still comfortable, and if you're used to something that's performance-oriented like this GT is, you're probably not going to have an issue with it whatsoever. But if you do want to have a little bit more adjustability, the Performance Edition does give you the Magna Ride adaptive dampers, and that supposedly makes the ride the best out of all the Mach-Es. And so definitely, you know, it's probably something worth getting if you, you know, do find the ride a little bit lacking here in a regular GT. That, by the way, for that Performance Edition package, that's $6,000 for that package. It also gives you slightly bigger brakes. It also gives you the unbridled extend mode so that you have a more sportier torque split, which I'll talk about more once we're on a back road here, and a few other things that it gives you, you know, along with the seats and stuff. But anyway, other things, visibility is great like in all the other Mach-Es, you know, very good view forward, view out of the sides is good, view out of the back is also pretty good thanks to that extra little cutout at the top there. Other things here, so brakes have a nice and progressive feeling to them here. Now this press vehicle has 8,000 miles on it, so I think that certainly helps because our brand new premium Mach-E actually has kind of touchy brakes and it's a little tricky to be smooth with, but I believe that's just part of the wearing in process. And this one, you know, having 8,000 likely hard miles means that these brakes are very predictable, very easy and smooth to use. Throttle response, of course, being an electric vehicle, is razor sharp, very, very quick, and you can put it into the unbridled mode to give you sharper throttle. Also, speaking of the brakes, you can have a sharper brake response if you go for the unbridled extend mode in the performance editions as well. And so one little thing to note there, but I mean, obviously being an electric vehicle, nice and quiet too. And, you know, so it makes it a very luxurious experience whenever you're just, you know, cruising around at low speeds. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into the unbridled mode, which definitely does make everything a little bit sportier, changes the gauge graphics here as well. And let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Wow. Whoa. Jeez, man, this thing, it's fast. Wow, 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 wow. And it really takes off very, very well. And it's interesting though, I'm not sure why, but when I take my foot off the gas, it continues accelerating for a solid like second before it actually starts, you know, coming back off the power there. So that's interesting, very, very interesting. Not the most precise, honestly, because of that. I'm not sure why it's doing that. You also do get increased regen here in the unbridled mode. So maybe I'll do an acceleration and engage in a minute and see if that unintended acceleration thing is still present here. I believe there was a recall for that, but I would assume this vehicle has that already done. But anyway, very impressive performance here. So all GTs get 480 horsepower, which is 134 more than what you get on a regular Mach-E for the most powerful version of the regular ones. And you'll get 600 pound-feet of torque. And if that's not enough for you, the Performance Edition gives you 634 pound-feet of torque. But anyway, it adds up to giving you a 3.8 second 0 to 60 time here for the regular GT. It's a 3.5 second 0 to 60 if you go for that Performance Edition. And yeah, wow, this thing is impressive. The hood really is, I like the little sounds too. It does have a propulsion sound on currently, but I still think it sounds really good, you know, just having that little bit of extra sound. But yeah, we'll go to engage and try another acceleration here now. Actually got some wheel spin that time. Okay, so engage definitely ramps down the throttle, so when I take my foot off the gas, it does slow down better. So it's just unbridled that has that strange effect there. But I'm going to put it back into the unbridled mode, just give us the sportiest settings for everything here. But it really is a good amount of punch. I also really love how the GTs have a little power meter here. It's very small, but it's in the bottom left there and shows you the regen and how much power it's putting out. The regular Mach-Es don't have that. And that's something I really would like to have on a regular Mach-E because it's nice to have. But anyway, coming up some corners here, I always take in all my reviews here. Let's see how the GT version handles. So this thing is 5,000 pounds here for the GT. and we're still only on 245 wide tires, but wow, this thing, it's handling better than I was expecting it to, honestly. I was really, you know, didn't have high hopes of these all-season tires, but really nice. The steering is kind of stiff, but I think it just really gives it a nice weighty and confidence-inspiring feeling. Okay, but yeah. Oh yeah, it'll play around with you though. I mean, you know, even though this is only a 50-50 split for the power here, you only get a 60-40 split in the Performance Edition in the Unbridled Extend mode. But even with you know, just the 50-50 split, this thing really, you know, when to kick the back end out. That's one thing I really love about the Mach-E is they did try and make it feel a little more rear-wheel drive bias to give you a little bit more of that Mustang flavor and character. And so I do appreciate that. But I mean, I could tell though the back end was wanting to, you know, kick out a tiny bit, but then the front end was also starting to lose grip simultaneously. I think I would just go for the Performance Edition, honestly. $6,000 is a, you know, significant upcharge, but to have the summer tires, I think is really a nice improvement. Or just go buy your own summer tires, I suppose, if you don't need all the other stuff of the Performance Edition. I think, you know, even a performance all season, I don't know why Ford didn't put like the Pilot Sport all season tire, because they do have a great all season that still has, you know, better performance capabilities than a regular all season like these Continentals. So I'm not sure why they didn't at least spring for those. But this thing though, it's a handful. It really is a handful. And I find myself being on my toes a little more in this than I did in the GV60 Performance that I had a couple weeks ago from Genesis. That has very similar performance as far as acceleration goes, you know, very similar amounts of power and all of that. But that was a little more confident in its handling. It just gripped and went, and it was just very, very confidence inspiring. This is exhilarating. It's less confidence inspiring. It doesn't scare me necessarily, but it certainly keeps you on your toes, and it makes you have to just make sure that you're not being an idiot in this vehicle. I think you could probably get away with a little bit more stupid driving in the GV60 than you can in this. This thing could kind of fight back a little bit, which I like though. That's the same kind of Mustang character, you know, same thing with the regular Mustangs. You know, my Mustang Bullet that I own, that thing also, you know, if you act like an idiot, it will get out of shape on you. And so I kind of like that. I think this GT actually does feel a little bit more like a Mustang now than the regular Premium did. That was one of my complaints of the regular Premium, is aside from the, you know, slightly more tail-happy back end, it didn't really feel very much like a Mustang. This, being a little bit wilder and being a little more sketchy, honestly, with its handling, I think actually helps. I'd really love to try out, you know, one of these on summer tires to see how they compare back to back and see if you lose some of that character with the better grip or not. Yeah, let's do another acceleration just for fun. Man, yeah, this thing, it's impressive. Now, I will say that the power starts to taper off a little bit around like maybe 50 miles an hour or so. That's when it, you know, it gets a little less intense, but it still pulls very, very strong. And it's still so fast. I mean, we're talking about a vehicle that does 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. I mean, it's wild performance. And also, whenever you want to slow yourself down, the GTs do have some beefed up brakes here, but nothing super huge. Now, if you go for the Performance Edition, though, they are slightly larger, and then Brembo 4-piston brakes up front. Other things about the GT to know here is that they all run the 91 kilowatt hour battery, which is the larger battery pack for the Mach-E's. And so with the regular GT, you get 270 miles of range. If you go for the Performance Edition, that drops down to 260 miles of range is what the range is quoted at. But this vehicle arrived to me with 100% charge, and it was quoted me 275 miles. So that range will vary, obviously, depending on your driving, just like fuel economy does. But, you know, it's just worth noting you can get actually better than 270 miles of range out of one of these, depending on how you drive. It'll also do 150 kilowatt fast charging, you know, so it'll top the battery off, you know, pretty quickly as well. And it does have good grip though. I mean, that acceleration, I was like, you know, maybe 3/4 throttle with the wheel turned, and, you know, still hung on pretty good here. And so, I mean, the 245s are definitely a huge improvement over the 225s of a regular Mach-E, that's for sure. Because the regular Mach-E, you know, the understeer is pretty apparent pretty early on. You can't really push those, you know, a whole lot. They still handle pretty well, but the 245s here are a very nice upgrade. Yeah, I mean, it turns in really nicely and just, yeah, feels really good as far as the handling goes. And yeah, 5,000 pounds is the curb weight. Does it feel like 5,000 pounds? No, thanks to the battery being in the floor there, you know, nice and low, giving you a very low center of gravity. You know, I'd say this feels closer to like, you know, a little over 4,000 pounds from the seat of the pants, at least in my opinion. And some more corners here. Try it out again. Yeah, it's really nice and neutral. I would love to try the 60-40 split of the Performance Edition in the Unbridled Extend mode, but also in that mode, it will also give you louder propulsion sounds and also relax the aids so that you have, you know, more lenient stability control systems, so you can, you know, get a little more slidey, I'm sure. But Yeah, I mean, the tires will protest if you know, start accelerating a little too early out of a corner. But, you know, I think that actually it does very well as far as the handling goes, even on the all-season tires. It's better than I expected it, honestly. And so, yeah, but it's easy. You know, you want more grip. It's an easy tire upgrade away, even on a regular GT here, but it's still a very good handling car. And now we're coming up some potholes here, and let's see how this vehicle does. Again, on these 20-inch wheels, you know, pretty thin sidewalls, but not too bad. And, you know, the sport suspension, I mean, it really glides over most of them. I mean, it's really not that bad. It's still very nice, very daily drivable, not bad at all. And it's great that, again, you do have the MagneRide option with the Performance Edition, if, you know, that is something that, you know, you think you would appreciate. But this isn't beating me up by any means. It's totally fine, still very sporty, very flat with the handling, but still gives you a nice, comfortable ride. And overall, I think they really tuned the suspension really well here, just for the regular GT Sport suspension. And merging onto the highway here. Man, wheel spin at like 30 miles an hour. That was wild. It's so funny. This thing's all-wheel drive, and it still is really loving to rip these tires. And also, I think part of the reason why is because the bigger front motor is the only upgrade. There is no bigger rear motor. It's the same rear motor as any other Mach-E, so it's just way more power to the front. And so I think that just means that those front tires get a little overwhelmed. Instead of sharing the burden evenly with the front and the back, you got the front tires working overtime a little bit. And so I think that's part of why, you know, you get that wheel spin. But anyways, for now we're out on the highway here. I'm going to set the adaptive cruise control system. This also does have BlueCruise, so it's the hands-free thing, so we're going to try that out here and see how that does. And so it lit up with the BlueCruise on, watch the road, be prepared to resume control. So I'm going to test this out. This is actually my first time trying out BlueCruise, and so I'm just going to see here how it does. I've had a lot of experience with Cadillac Super Cruise system. That system was very impressive to me. I really liked the way that it alerted the driver, kept the driver you know, informed of what it was doing. And so we're going around some gentle corners here now, and doing a really good job here so far. And now it's telling me to keep my hands on the wheel, so BlueCruise is off now. And it's unfortunate because we're coming up to another little gentle corner here. I was hoping to see how it did with the steering there for that, but it's wanting me to have my hands on the wheel here currently. So BlueCruise, I don't know if they've mapped as many miles as Cadillac has yet, but this is a main interstate. I would assume this has already been mapped for BlueCruise, but yeah, it's not turning on BlueCruise anymore here. So yeah, I'm not sure, you know, why it's not working as much as I'm expecting it to here, but even as a normal lane keeping system, it does work very well. Okay, now BlueCruise is coming back on, so I'm hands-free. And I do like that the gauge cluster, you know, at least lets me know, and it changes color drastically so that it's a very clear, like, hey, this is happening. And then whenever the BlueCruise is not working, then it goes back to a white background there for the gauges. So it is a large enough change that even though I don't have a head-up display or the light-up steering wheel on the Cadillac to notify me of what's going on, at least, you know, I don't have to be staring at the gauge cluster to be informed of what's happening. You know, it's pretty apparent, even just in my peripheral vision, of what it's doing. But it's doing a really good job here still. So I'm pretty impressed so far. I'm going to see if I can test this out a little bit more during my week here and see how it does a little bit more. It's also worth noting too that I can make slight little adjustments without it immediately kicking me out of BlueCruise. So if I do want to kind of take a little bit of a nudge on the wheel myself, I can do that while still having the BlueCruise on, which is certainly nice. And of course, you can take over at any point if you want, but it's just, you know, nice that, you know, it does that while still keeping the system engaged. And yeah, pretty impressed with it. Also, at highway speeds here, it's also nice and comfortable. Not too much wind noise or road noise or anything like that. The Mach-E's are really well done as far as, you know, being comfortable cruisers, and so out on the highway they're really nice as well. But with the BlueCruise there, I mean, that really sets it apart from stuff like the Genesis GV60 or even the Tesla Model Y Performance. You know, that doesn't have the hands-free thing still, and so I think that if you're doing a long highway trip in one of these EVs, the Mach-E is hands down going to be the best one, because it is the only one currently, aside from the Cadillac Lyriq coming here later this year, that actually is going to be giving you a truly hands-free experience. But anyway, thanks to Ford, I will have the Mach-E GT here for an entire week, so I'm going to drive around all over the place, and I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world efficiency, as well as my thoughts on the pricing and how it compares to its competition, and anything else I noticed here during my week of driving. Alright, so I've been driving the Mach-E GT for a while longer now, and man, this thing is so much fun to drive. I really love the way the power builds. Now, it does drop off for sure as you get, you know, up to higher speeds, but it really is so impressive. And I love just slingshotting myself out of corners and intersections and stuff like that. And this thing, just the way it takes off, it is really addictive and so much fun. I also appreciate there's a little more electrical whine that's actual natural real noise from the electric motors. I hear more of that than I do in a lot of the other competitors that I've driven. And I like that, you know. I still like having some type of sound, and I'm glad they didn't mask that completely. And some of the others you'll hear a little, but this has more, and I just like that real sound. The propulsion noise is fine, it's whatever, you can turn it off if you don't like it, but the actual real noises I really do like, and I wish that those were honestly just amplified, and I could hear those even better. But there was one thing though that I noticed as I drove this vehicle more, and especially in the rain, it became apparent, and that is torque steer. So, you know, the way that Ford did the Mach-E here, you know, for the GT, you have the more powerful motor up front. I think that's a mistake, especially if you want to make this feel like a Mustang, which is a rear-wheel drive car. Why they put the more powerful motor in the front versus in the rear, I don't know if there's some engineering reason why they couldn't put it in the back, but that would have really made this feel more like a Mustang, because, you know, yes, this thing will still kick the back end out a little bit, and especially if you get the Performance Edition with the Unbridled Extend mode, you know, you can have a little bit more of that tail happiness with the 40-60 torque split, but it's still just, you still have more power going through the front wheels than you do in the back in most situations, especially when you're, you know, punching it here in a straight line and stuff. And so feeling torque steer in something that they're claiming is a Mustang just doesn't fit in my mind. It just doesn't work. You know, it's fun. I like torque steer, and I think torque steer could be a lot of fun in the right applications. I think, you know, Veloster N, Elantra N, those things, they actually play up the torque steer, and it's really fun, and I love it. It adds a lot of engagement and excitement. And in this, it's also fun, again, if I divorce this car from its Mustang name. You know, if I'm just looking at this as some electric Ford, I love it. I think it's awesome, and, you know, just a lot of fun. But, you know, given the Mustang branding, I think that now that I've made this discovery about the torque steer, I actually think that maybe the regular Mach-E feels more like a Mustang, and I think the GT actually feels less like a Mustang than the regular you know, Mach-E, because the regular Mach-E never had torque steer, and this does. And so that makes this feel more like a front-wheel drive car than a rear-wheel drive car. And that's the exact opposite direction of where they needed to take the GT, in my opinion, if they wanted to justify the Mustang branding. But as it is, it still is a very fun electric vehicle. I still think it's one of my favorite electric vehicles out there, especially as far as performance ones goes. But before I get into the competition here, very briefly, I do want to mention my efficiency here. So over my time of driving here, I've been averaging 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour, which I find to be actually pretty impressive, because I think I was getting almost identical efficiency numbers in the regular Mach-E extended range all-wheel drive that I had about a year and a half ago. So the extra performance here doesn't really seem to hurt efficiency, which is great. And you know, I mean, after a good amount of driving here, you know, it's still telling me I got a good chunk of battery left. It's not burning through the battery super fast, even whenever I do punch it. And so I'm just really happy with that efficiency here, you know, considering this is a performance vehicle. Usually performance means less efficiency. Doesn't seem to be the case here, at least with the GT, in my experience. But anyway, getting into the competition and the pricing here. So this is a 2021 model year vehicle, and this one has a sticker price of just under $65,000. And while these still start at about $63,000, they have upped the price so that a comparable one to this one, which this, you know, still charges you for the BlueCruise as well as the panoramic roof, which are still options here, even in the 2022 model year. And so anyway, one of these would be, you know, in the high $60,000 range. The Performance Edition is about $6,000 more, so that does start at $69,000. Then you add on the other goodies and stuff, you get up to around $72,000 with current pricing here in August of 2022 when I'm filming this. So at that price point, I still think this is pretty competitive, because the main competitor that a lot of people will probably look at is the Tesla Model Y Performance. And Model Y Performance doesn't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto integration, doesn't have a gauge screen, and also you have the, you know, the spotty fit and finish of Teslas, and, you know, that whole issue with those. Now the Teslas do offer more range and stuff, but it's also more expensive. You know, they start at 70 grand, and they admittedly do have, you know, comparable performance, and the range is, again, a little bit better. They're quoted at 303 miles, but, you know, this is still going to do 270 here with the GT. So I mean, you're not off by a big amount. But, you know, the Tesla, though, if you want the enhanced autopilot, which does do, you know, the adaptive cruise control system stuff, essentially, that still puts one of these at 6 grand more. That puts you up, you know, at 76 grand. And then if you want the full self-driving thing, which still isn't hands-free, by the way, but, you know, is supposedly going to be someday actually be able to do, you know, mostly autonomous driving. We'll see about that, but it's still very misleading currently in 2022 here, the way they've branded that. It is not full self-driving. Even if it was, though, it's $12,000 extra on a Model Y versus this having BlueCruise already as standard here, and BlueCruise, you know, gives you actual hands-free driving with driver monitoring, so that it actually holds you accountable, and you know, make sure that you are paying attention whenever you don't have your hands on the wheel there. And you know, the BlueCruise did, you know, work pretty well in my continued experience with this. So to me, I just don't think the Tesla's a good value anymore. They continue to jack the prices up on those as well, and hands down, I would take this over a Tesla, no questions asked. Don't even have to think twice about it. Now, the other competitors out there, you know, you have basically right now just the Genesis GV60 Performance, which I did test out very recently, actually, and that actually, you know, has less range, 235 miles, less power, but actually the same 0 to 60 time as this. So realistically, you know, at least as far as 0 to 60 times goes, it's going to feel pretty same power-wise, and it feels pretty much the same to me, honestly. And those, you know, you don't have the wireless CarPlay integration, but you do have a luxury branded vehicle. It's more luxurious inside the Genesis versus this, but you know, there's also a few little compromises and stuff here and there. It's going to come down to personal preference. You can watch my GV60 video if you're curious to hear some of the breakdown of that vehicle, but that does have faster charging and stuff as well. But regardless, you know, for a luxury branded thing with similar performance, those are about $69,000 the way that it was equipped, the way I was testing it, and so, you know, very comparable to this. And you have a luxury branded vehicle, and you get a longer warranty also with the Genesis, the faster recharge times. There's a lot going for the Genesis, so I think it's definitely worth a solid look. There's that front wheel spinning again, and a little bit of a tugging at the wheel there. It's fun though, for sure. It definitely is exciting. There's no debate about that. But anyway, so, you know, as far as current competition goes, this is very competitive and one of the best out there. But things are going to get interesting here in the next year or so. So if you're not watching this right as I've uploaded it, or if you are, you know, placing an order for 2023, just keep in mind there's also the Kia EV6 GT coming. Very similar performance. We don't have pricing for that as of August of 2022 here. But another one to keep your eye on is going to have the same kind of performance and that fast recharge time like the Genesis, but still have the same performance of the Mach-E here, essentially. Definitely one to consider. Another thing also coming, you know, here in 2023 is the Chevy Blazer SS EV, which is going to be more power than this. I think you have actually like 70 or so or 80 more horsepower than this, and it has faster recharge times, and it's going to have more range. I believe they're quoting 290 miles of range in that SS version. So basically better in a lot of ways. It's also going to have a sunshade for the roof, which you don't have here in this. It's going to have cooled seats, which you don't have here in this, and some key real nice upgrades that you don't get in the Mach-E, and those they're claiming are going to be starting around $66,000 for those. Now again, we'll have to see when they're loaded up with all the options and stuff how much they go for, but it just is in the same ballpark of pricing as this. And again, if you're someone, since a lot of these, you know, if you try and order a Mach-E GT currently, you're probably not going to get it until next year either. So, you know, if you're ordering for 2023, you know, you can order, I believe, or at least reserve a Blazer SS EV currently, and that is another one to take a good hard look at. Obviously, you know, it's kind of a shot in the dark as far as how it's going to drive and stuff, because I haven't driven it yet, no one has, but, you know, I just think that's another very solid competitor that I would give a good hard look at if you're ordering something for 2023. But anyway, overall, you know, I'm still very impressed with the Mach-E GT. It was still a lot of fun, even though I have a little bit of an issue still with the Mustang branding. It was really cool to come out at night too and see the illuminated pony badge that greets you whenever you approach the vehicle, and also stays on whenever you leave the vehicle, you know, for a little bit there. It's really cool. There's a lot of cool touches here in this. I really like the way that Ford set a lot of the things up with the infotainment, you know, the packaging of everything, and having the front trunk, which is something that not all the others will give you. I mean, there are some really nice things here in the Mach-E that certainly make it worth considering, and I still think it's a fantastic EV, you know, especially if, you know, the whole Mustang thing doesn't bother you at all. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the Mach-E GT. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Ford for providing me here with the Mach-E GT to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.